Welcome to Filmi, ladies. Pitu, I have just one thing to say to you, which is that
What?
when you are sad, I am double sad.
Oh no. Why are you double sad when I'm sad?
That's what the gangster says to Sunil.
All right. So you're admitting you're a gangster, Beth? I knew it.
I mean,
I
you
knew
can't
it.
live in Illinois this long and not have some kind of, criminal connection.
Do you have like Al Capone somewhere in your like genealogy or
I'm not going
something?
to tell you.
Of course, you'd have to kill me then. Do you also enjoy dancing around in nightclubs wearing flashy outfits? I feel like you do.
I definitely enjoy wearing flashy outfits. I'm
Mm,
not a great dancer, as previously discussed, but there's safety in numbers here. So
right.
yeah, sure. In
Do
Chinatown,
you
yeah,
enjoy Bonnie M's Rasputin as well?
obviously.
Amazing.
Everyone enjoys that.
Everyone enjoys that. It's such a banger, that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're
So,
talking about Kabhi Haan Kabhi Na, obviously. If I
yay.
recall, this is one of your at least
Yes,
favorite Shah Rukh films, if not films overall. So
right.
it was time we talked about it.
My favorite Shah Rukh Khan films, there's three films, and my answer changes depending on which one I most
Sure.
recently watched. So there's Chak De India, there's Paheli, and there's Kabhi Haan Kabhi Na.
But not K3G?
That is my overall favorite movie. Like
Ah,
my overall most favorite movie would be K3G, but then my
okay.
favorite Shah Rukh performance would be Kabhi
I
Haan Kabhi
see.
Na,
I
Chak De
see.
India, and Paheli. But Shah Rukh is always common in all of
Sure.
these answers,
Sure.
right? And Kabhi Haan Kabhi Na actually completed 30 years. I believe this either February or March. So it's
Yeah.
unbelievable to me. Like 3 decades, where has the time gone? It's crazy.
Yeah.
Do you like this movie as well?
I do. It's not going to be a favorite for me, I don't think. And extremely unpopular opinion, ahoy. I have never really gotten fully on board with Johnny B. Do.
Okay.
I like it. It does not speak to me the way it does to many people. I have not rewatched it in quite some time, so I do need to rewatch it. I read Jay Arjun Singh's book about it. I just need to rewatch it. But I think for
Mm.
me, this filmmaker may not be just what moves my soul. However, I think this is very competent. It was charming. Shah Rukh's performance in particular is really cute. Like,
Yeah.
um, nice lesson of or story about growing up and being more mature and that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, it's a pleasant film for me. Certainly not a
Mhm.
favorite.
I think what I love about this movie so much is, I mean, first of all, the music. The music is
Mhm.
just I love the music of this movie so much. I also like the fact that it's an easy watch
Yes.
because India, for example, is not an easy watch. Swades is a very difficult watch. Dar, Anjam, Bazigar, you kind of have to be in the mood for that level of like, action and angst and stuff like that. So I like that Kabhi Haan Kabhi Na is a movie that I can watch at any time, depending
Hmm.
on, and it's never a downer.
Hmm.
Also find it interesting that this is the only movie that I've seen in which the hero is an actual loser.
Yeah.
Because there's losers in Hindi films, right? But they're the supporting actor. Like they're like
Mm.
the sidekick or like the brother or the best friend. It's something like that. It's never the hero. And if the hero is a loser, then he undergoes a journey where he becomes heroic, like Rabne Banadi Jodi, where Surinder Sani goes from this like mousy
Yeah.
office worker to like the more flashy, whatever creature that he becomes. This is kind of the only movie where he's kind of allowed to remain a hero and a loser, and I think that's okay.
Mm.
Like you don't have to be like a flashy, larger than life person. You
Mhm.
don't have to suddenly steer your ship around and become like a neuroscientist or something. Like, let's face it, he's probably just gonna work in his dad's garage for the rest of his life because he's not very smart. He's also not very hardworking, and he's certainly not ambitious. So he'll probably just be a car mechanic, and that's fine.
I mean, that's
Um,
a very certain kind of smarts for sure. Like, I don't
yeah.
think dum-dums are car mechanics, so
Although I don't think he has those smarts either.
I would be surprised, or that at least he does not apply self, you know,
Right.
in the words of a teacher report card.
Right. Like he's very much the definition of a slacker.
Bit of a slacker, yeah. Except about music, like he does actually work
Yes.
at music, which is interesting, and I like that they talk about that a little bit. Like
Yeah,
he does have a thing that motivates him. He does learn to apply it in different ways. So
right. But I think that's sweet. I like the fact that
mhm.
this movie isn't, it's really not that aspirational. And
No.
it's just kind of like, well, this is who he is, and c'est la vie, and that's fine. And it's also interesting because it's one of the few movies where, even though I've seen this movie 100 million times, I'm always surprised at the choices he makes, because in
Mm,
most movies, I mean, we've all spoken about, like, thought about, like, the stalker hero,
mm.
and Shah Rukh certainly has like a PhD in playing stalker heroes, right? It's like, when the girl says no to you, what do you do? Do you act like a complete psycho, incel,
Yeah.
horrible person, a la Dar and Anjam and things like that? Or do you just say, ah, well, and move on? And then he does these weird, like, underhanded things, like trying to like defame her and stuff like that, trying to like
Yeah.
sabotage Deepak Tijori all he can, which all of which is like problematic, but also ultimately harmless. So it's interesting because, again, I don't think we see visuals like this in cinema, and so in that sense, it strikes me as just being very unique.
Yeah. Yeah. He is, I had forgotten that he what he does in the beginning of the film. So I'm sure everyone has seen it. We won't worry about spoilers.
Yeah.
Um, he's really bad to Anna. That's
Yeah.
really bad what he does.
Yeah.
And I it was interesting to kind of think through my own reactions to that and kind of sit with that because it's not a violence, but it
Hmm.
is very bad.
Hmm.
Um, to go
It's a
around besmirching
besmirching
someone, and it's
jinx.
very misogynistic,
It is.
very misogynistic. And I am not sure that I think he fully understands what he did. And he does, it takes them a little while, everyone a little while to forgive him, but I'm not sure that I think he learned that lesson really.
Yeah.
I think maybe he learns the lesson about the great inflation.
Mm. Okay. Yeah.
Although maybe not, but I'm not super optimistic for Sunil by the end of the film that he's actually learned and grown,
Right.
um, or that he won't just do this again. Um, like, will he apply the lessons from one case to another? He might not do
Hmm.
exactly the same thing again, but will he, has he really taken this on? I don't know. But also I don't want to say I don't care, but I'm not super duper rooting for this guy because he's
Hmm.
old enough to know better than this anyway. It's
Right.
interesting. It's an interesting kind of. I guess I feel kind of uneasy in this film, and
Yeah.
not in an upsetting way, but just kind of like how do I sit with this?
Yeah. I think I feel more optimistic about it only because his community and his family and his
Yeah,
connections are so important to him, and they're given so much screen time,
they
right?
are.
Like, Father, is his last name Braganza? Yes, Father Braganza, played by
Yeah.
Nasruddin Shah, is very much like the voice of conscience. He's always like telling him what to do. Like, he's, making him make the hard decisions, like, especially with, coming clean about the grades.
More so about the grades than about what he does to Anna,
Yeah.
though. I was kind of watching that, and maybe it was a
Yeah.
subtitle issue, but I kind of thought that the priest's advice about like, oh, we'll just go say you're sorry and find a way to win her over, like,
Right. He certainly cared much more about the lying to the parents and the grade
yeah,
inflation and stuff like that. But I feel optimistic that, like, his parents, the priest, his friends, Anna herself, Deepak Tijori's character, Anna's parents. I feel like he has such a close knit family and friends. His sister, like, everyone's kind of like rooting for him. That sometimes
mm-hmm,
that's the kind of like
mm-hmm,
guidance you need for someone to like kind of steer you on that right path.
mm-hmm,
Because if you don't have that and you're just like, then you could easily become like some sort of terrible incel person. And I think that his people are what are going to, in a way, prop him up and prevent him from going down
yeah,
the incel route.
I hope
I think
so.
some of the uneasiness also comes from the fact that it's Shah Rukh, and we've seen him go down these roads before.
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
actually found it astounding that originally it seems Amir Khan had been cast to
Ah.
play the role of Sunil, and Shah Rukh
Mhm.
had been cast to play the role of Deepak Tijori. And then Amir apparently, I know, and
That
Amir
would make
lost,
more sense in a way
right.
because apologies, but don't find Chris compelling, I have to say.
No, Deepak Tijori is terrible.
I just find him kind of a blank, right? Like I don't hate the performance. I don't there's nothing much there to respond to for me. So
Yeah,
so we had a comment on Twitter that was laughing that I had said the word nothing burger about
right.
and I was like, again, Chris is a nothing burger to me in this
Yeah.
film.
But the interesting thing is, at least I think at that time and thereabouts, Deepak Tijori was actually considered hot stuff, which is
Mm,
hilarious because I've never found the man even remotely hot stuff. He's barely lukewarm at best. Um, but in movies like Khiladi, for instance, he has second billing with, or
mm,
maybe kind of on par billing with Akshay Kumar. Like he's one of the two
wow.
couples and stuff. Like Deepak Tijori was considered like super good looking, meant for stardom kind of a thing. And I'm like, really? Deepak Tijori? I mean, have you seen the kind of competition that he had at the time? But then, of course, he kind of like flamed out because he didn't really have the talent to like live up to the hype, sort of. But at the
Mm,
time that this movie was made, casting Deepak Tijori as the guy that Anna has her eyes, like her sights on, and they kind of have this chemistry, that actually made perfect sense at that time. And at that time, Shah Rukh kind of had sort of solidified this whole like incel thing that he had going on with like Dar and Anjam, because these movies came literally within like 2 or 3 years of each
it
other.
it was shocking to me that Dar was just a few months before this one in terms of release. So they couldn't
Hmm.
have known when they were filming what was to come, but I mean,
Yeah,
what a like swings back and forth, pretty amazing.
yeah. And the interesting thing about Kabhi Haan Kabhi Naa actually is that apparently after they made it, they couldn't find anyone to buy the movie. There were no distributors,
Mm,
and they were really struggling to sell it. And Bazigar became a hit. And after Bazigar became a hit, they found
uh,
distributors because Bazigar was a ginormous hit, and they were like, okay, okay, fine, we can sell this then. So it's possible that if Dar and Bazigar had not been the gigantic hits that they
right.
were, it's possible this movie would just have been stuck in like some sort of limbo where they never would have released it or something.
Yeah, this is one of those projects that at least in retrospect, but it sounds like from what you're saying at the time as well. Would this movie work without this person in the lead?
No, this movie is a Shah Rukh Khan vehicle through and through. I would only watch this movie for Shah Rukh Khan, and I think only Shah Rukh could have portrayed this because I actually think that doing a role like Sunil is so hard, Beth.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that difficult to do a role like Dar or Anjam where you're just full on psycho. I don't think it's that hard to do the goody goody roles like his role in K3G or
Mhm.
all the myriad roles that Salman Khan has done in Rajashri, Bajatya movies. I feel like those roles are easy, but to do a role like this where you're a loser but you're also lovable, but you also do some very very shady and extremely questionable things, but
Yeah.
at the same time you manage to get the audience on your side and they're rooting for you. It's complicated, and i I just think that's so hard to do. You just have to have such a nuanced portrayal, and honestly you have to have so much charm. Without charm, this movie just wouldn't work. I mean, without Shah Rukh's dimples and his floppy hair and his
Yeah.
sweetness, I do think his wardrobe and his styling plays a huge role.
It's very good. I agree.
Yeah, it does play a huge role in taking some of that uneasiness away and making you root for him even more because he's wearing these like weird oversized t-shirts. There's always a stain on them
Very
because he's such a
90s.
slob. Yeah, but then his hair, he needs a haircut clearly. He's sweating half the time. Like this is not a guy who's with it, right? Like he's not on
Yeah, I
time
guess
ever.
not.
He's
Yeah.
just kind of a slobby, weird thing. Like literally from the first frame of the film, people are exasperated with him because he
Mhm.
just never does things on time. Even in his
Mhm.
dream, people
Yeah,
are
that's
exasperated.
true. That's
Yeah, like
true.
people are just always like, ugh, grow up, man. You
Yeah.
know? And I think that does play a part it plays a role in lulling the audience, I think, because you're like,
Mhm.
he's fine, he's harmless. Like, come on, look at him. He's such a loser. He's not going to do anything really bad, Beth. Like, I
Mm.
think it plays a role into just kind of like disarming the audience. And I think his charm really helps. I think for me, also part of the thing is nostalgia,
Sure.
because when this movie came out in 94, this was like my generation basically saw Shah Rukh go from an absolute nobody to becoming, this massive star in a
Mhm.
span of very few years. Like, it was meteoric, his rise, and it was crazy. And it was so interesting to hear all the conversations around him. Like, I remember the first time I heard about Shah Rukh Khan was when I was in school, and everyone in my school had a crush on Tom Cruise because of Top Gun and things
Sure.
like that. And it was like there were two camps, right? There were the Tom Cruise fans, among whom I was one of the people, and then there were the Brad Pitt fans. And then the Brad Pitt people didn't like the Tom Cruise people, and vice versa. So you had to pick your camp, and I was firmly in the Tom Cruise camp, right? And none of us were even remotely interested in Hindi films because,
Mm.
I mean, our parents watched Hindi films. You didn't watch Hindi films if you were fun and cool. You watched Hollywood films and you liked
Mm.
Hollywood movies, right? So you weren't interested in this stuff. I certainly wasn't, because part of it was also that because I didn't grow up in India and I didn't have access to like
Yeah.
Hindi movie theaters, the
Yeah.
cassettes we had at home would be like these 50s movies of like Dilip Kumar doing Rona Dhona. And I was like, who wants to watch that stuff? Right. So I remember being in school and these older girls were talking, and they were talking about a movie called Divana, and I overheard them and I was like, what are you guys talking about? And one of them was like nice enough to answer. And she was like, oh, there's a new movie. It's called Divana. And the actor in it is very handsome. And I was like, is he more handsome than Tom Cruise? Because that was like the golden standard.
Mhm.
And she was like, oh, he's more handsome than Tom Cruise. And he can dance and he's very cute. And I was like,
Mm.
oh. And then that's how I saw Divana. And I was like, oh my God. So I remember that. But I also remember telling my parents, can we get movies of an actor called Shah Rukh Khan from the grocery store, uncle? And my dad was like, who's that? And I was like, I don't know. He's a new guy. And I remember my dad watching like Dilash Naha and Divana, like a little bit of it with me. And he was like, this guy's a hero. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, why? Because he completely broke the mold.
Yeah.
For our parents' generation, to be a hero, you had to be fair complexioned. You had to look really nice. I mean, well groomed, right?
Mhm.
Like your hair and everything had to be very nicey nice. You couldn't be too like massy. You had to be more classy. You had to be well put together. Enunciation, dialogue was important. Like, this is a generation that loved Dilip Kumar and Devanand
Mhm.
and people like, and then they watch Shah Rukh Khan on screen and they're like, he is terrible. Why would you watch this person's movies?
Mm.
But then all the teenage girls were crazy about him. And then in subsequent years, like when I would go to India, whatever, I would watch his movies in movie theaters. And I remember hordes and hordes of young women. It was mostly young women, like
Sure.
teenagers, girls in their 20s, who would go to movie theaters and they would scream and shout when it would say, and Shah Rukh Khan on. So
Yeah.
for me, so much of it is also nostalgia. Like that scene where he's on the motorbike and he's like, going in that neon jacket and the hat. And
Mhm.
when he's the song Divana, Tera Divana, and he's going to the train station, we all wanted that in our life, right? Like, you're young, you have raging hormones. There's a cute guy in class, but you're too scared to talk to him. Also, he has the hots for the popular girl. And Shah Rukh was someone that all of you could like he could be yours, like
Mm.
for those 3 hours in the movie theater, he belonged to you.
Yeah.
And I remember having conversations with, girls my age or girls older than me, where we would say, Anna is so lucky. Why can't I be Anna? I want to be Anna. Like, I remember that. Even when he was playing a loser, he had that hold on us.
Mm.
And I remember, like, it's not like a rebellion as such, but I remember girls our age, you know, defiantly and vehemently telling their parents that Shah Rukh Khan was going to become a big star and he was going to be like amazing. And they were like, no, he's not. Um, and so I think Kabhi Haan Kabhi Na is part of those early films of his. It's only his 10th release. And it's part of that thing that kind of like you
Only
started seeing
10. Only 10.
only his,
I mean,
well,
This is
Yeah, but some
relative.
of those movies are terrible, right? Like, I'm
Right.
not gonna count Guddu and Chamatkar.
You have to. It happened.
There's also Maya Mein Saab, which Shah Rukh probably absolutely loathes. So, like, I think the same year that he did Maya Mein Saab, which I think is his most hated movie that he regrets doing,
Hmm.
he also did Kabhi Haan Kabhi Naa, which he has gone on record as saying is his favorite film that he's ever done. And he
Hmm.
wishes that he had produced it, but he does own the rights. Like Red Chilies owns the rights to Kabhi Haan Kabhi Naa. So this is a movie that's very dear to him. And I would love to read an interview or hear an interview where he talks about why that is,
Yeah.
right? Like, why does he love this character so much? I have no idea.
Hmm.
But I know why I love. It's just that era, it's that time, it's that
Sure.
euphoria, and it's a lasting love affair. I mean, this movie came out 30 years ago. I loved him then. I still love him now. He's still the Badshah for me.
Yeah.
And it was funny because our parents used to be like, "Ugh, he's so brown and he has long hair and he needs a haircut.
Hmm.
Look at how he talks, he stutters, and his enunciation is so bad and everything." We'd be like, too bad, still love him, you know? So, what do you think? Like, why do you have any guesses as to why this might be his favorite film? Because I've always found that interesting.
I can imagine it was fun to do, right?
Mm,
It's not that it isn't about anything, but it is kind of a lighthearted thing. And like you said, like maybe this is actually more challenging than Full Tilt
crazy.
Psycho.
Yeah.
Um, and especially well, I mean, and I don't want to say those things are necessarily easy because some people really can't do it, right?
Yeah.
But I can imagine this was kind of juicy to do. There's a I don't know if he's ever talked about, was he also someone who grew up loving Archies? Like it has a little bit of an Archies feel to it, not a ton,
Mm,
but a little bit, like smaller town, tight-knit
mhm.
group of friends, like nobody's really Anna's coming back from somewhere, but like they're not really going anywhere. Like
Yeah.
there's a locality to it that is maybe that's really fun to kind of build in. Um, the I'm not nuts about the songs in this film, but I do love the
Mhm.
big nightclub number where it's just
Mhm.
ridiculous that they improvised this thing.
There's
It is so ridiculous, but I enjoy that very much.
mhm.
Um, maybe it was fun to not get the girl in the end, to kind of bring something different to hero who isn't actually the winner, if we separate those two things out. So yeah, I can see why. And also it came at such a, he's on his way up when he made this. And I can imagine that doing something satisfying at that point in your life and then getting to look back quite quickly, probably upon it, like even a year after this came out, he was in a very different situation. So maybe
Mhm.
there's something to that too, that it just like as a growing star and a growing actor, like maybe this really like, you know, was juicy
Yeah.
to him.
Maybe
Also,
also go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, some of the people he's working with here are pros. Like you get to work with Nasiruddin Shah, you get to work with Satish Shah, you get to work with um the guy who plays his dad, whose name I'm forgetting.
Anjan
Oh,
Srivastav.
that's right, Shrivastava. Yeah, so like some of these guys are really, I mean, all sorts of, some of them are character actors, some of them are lead, but the elder generation in here, at least the men, are pretty amazing. So maybe that's really fun and kind
Yeah.
of like a learning opportunity.
Mhm. Yeah, and he was this, like, young upstart who was, like,
And
didn't know enough.
if you like Johnny B. Darrow, which so many people
Mhm.
do, getting to work with this director is probably a real treat, right? Like this might be
Mhm.
something that was on your list of what you'd like to accomplish. I don't know what Shah Rukh thinks of that film, but almost everybody seems to hold it very highly. So I can imagine he
Mhm.
does as well, especially as a Delhi actor kid, like
Mhm.
you'd want to do a project like this.
Right. I also wonder if some of this has to do with, and this is just me like imagining, right? This is just me thinking aloud, but like, what's it like to be on the cusp of stardom? Because when
Right.
this movie was released, he was already a star. But when it was being shot,
He
because
was
it was
not.
shot, and then for a year and a half, they were still looking for distributors, and there was a doubt about whether it would even be purchased by any distributors, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder if it was like, he was already a household name due to Fauji, and then he done all of these other movies, like there was Bazigar and Dar. I mean, he knew he was destined for greatness at this point. I mean, just on the basis of the directors he was working with. Like, you're so
Yeah.
young and you're working with Yash Chopra on
Yeah.
Dar with
Yeah.
like big names, right? Like Juhi Chawla was a big name, Sunny Deol was a big name. He's doing movies like Bazigar, where, again, all the supporting people are big names. And so I wonder if this was kind of like that feeling of, this is it. I'm going to hit the big leagues soon. This is my chance to like really live like a normal person's life, because once I
Mm,
sort of get into that orbit, that's it. I can never look back. I can never come back to what my roots are. I wonder if there's some of that element for him.
yeah.
I always find it interesting that with Shah Rukh, like, yes, he struggles so much earlier, but because he started working so much earlier, it's like once he hit the TV screens with Fauji, he just like shot off like a rocket. And then in retrospect, it does seem like he almost, I don't want to say he had like overnight stardom, that would be Hrithik Roshan with Kaho Na
Right.
Pyar Hai, but it just really seems like he had like the pick of projects just lined up, the biggest directors just lining up to give him these like amazing roles where they were undercutting the other stars' roles and giving him like the bigger character and stuff. And I'm just kind of like, how did that happen? Like, he really was, I think, destined for superstardom. What do you think of Sujata Krishnamurti?
I think she's charming.
Mhm.
Um, I did want Anna to be a little angrier at him.
Mhm.
Like, so there was a little, I might wish for a little more of Anna's interior life, you know? Um, and I don't think the film is uninterested in her, but it is really about Sunil.
Mhm.
Um, and you couldn't interchange Anna or the actress with just anyone else. I do think again, there's kind of like a lightness here that's really nice. She's not particularly filmy.
Mhm.
This film is not particularly filmy in some ways. So I thought she did a really lovely job. I just want a
Mhm.
little more from the writing for the character, but that's not her
Yeah.
fault at all.
I didn't feel like I knew Anna at all. Um,
Mm,
and I think that is also where the Archie's comparison comes in, because
yeah.
she's very Betty to me.
Yeah.
Like, what do we know about Betty? Like, I've read so many Archie's comics over the years. I know nothing about Betty beyond the fact that she's the girl next door and she has
Right.
a jaunty blonde ponytail and she's in love with Archie and she's
Yeah.
frenemies with Veronica. I don't
Yeah.
really know much about her. I don't know
Yeah.
much about Anna either. I'm like, she seems very, very young. I don't know where she'd gone. Like, had she gone somewhere for her education? She went somewhere and brought them presents. And then at the end of the movie, she's essentially getting married to Deepak Tijori. And I'm like,
Mhm.
what are her intentions? Like, does she want to be a stay at home, like, housewife or a mom or something? Does she want to start her own business? I know nothing about this chick. She just kind
Yeah.
of like exists to be pretty. And
She's
that's,
also kind of the only girl in the film. So
yeah,
you can't even say, oh, look how much more musical she is than all the other girls their age in their town. Like we don't know.
no,
Because this film is not interested in women.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, she's a as is often the case, the lead woman is still a little bit of a cipher. But again, is this the concept of you need, and I guess they wouldn't have known this necessarily when they made the film, but having a lead that's kind of blank enough that audiences can project themselves into there, like
right.
that is really a thing that people do. I don't want to criticize the writers of this too hard, and I do want to say like, well, maybe there was an intention there, but I just don't know. But yeah, I find her kind of
Yeah,
a she's pleasant. She's a very
yeah,
pleasant shrug, but she's a bit of a shrug. And I really felt for Anna at the end of the film. And I think this is partly her performance of, she's like, my parents are going to get me married off to Sunil and your family won't, your family
mm,
doesn't want me. Like, and she even says to, Chris, like, I appreciate your apology, but there's nothing that we can do about it. Like, this
yeah.
is what's
She
happening.
seems very passive, doesn't she? Like, even in her scene
Yeah, a
where she's like,
little bit. Is she
even in her
passive or
scene where she's upset,
is she obedient maybe, or is she passive? Like sometimes the effect is similar, but I'm not really
yeah.
sure which one she is.
I don't even feel like I'm getting a sense of obedience out of her. I just feel like she's one of those people that just sort of like drift through life and life happens to them. I mean, she seems very remarkably chill about getting
She's
married to
chill.
Sunil when she wants to marry Chris. I'm like, girl, that is a major life decision. And you really do seem to be interested in Chris. Like, so then why are you just like going along? And it also doesn't seem like she has stereotypical filmy parents who are going to like
No.
scream at her about Izzat and things like that if
Her
she says
parents are
no.
lovely. The parents in
They're
this movie are
adorable.
lovely.
Yes, they are. They're so cute. Satisha wanting at least the cherry on the cake.
I I've never liked him in a role as much as this. I don't think. Like sometimes he gets really saddled with comedy uncle nonsense. I feel like, and
Yeah.
this is an actual role. This is an
Yeah.
actual, I shouldn't say that those aren't roles. They are, but you know what I mean? Like this is a little more, this is not as wacky. This is a little more central and centered
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. And I was pleased to see him.
Yeah. I almost feel like I understand him more than I understand Anna.
Yep.
Like I already know that he's very proud of his bakery.
Very proud.
He really enjoys baking his own cakes. Like he's not like a bakery owner who just oversees stuff. He
That's
bakes his
right.
own cakes.
Yep.
But he also unfortunately has diabetes, which means he can't really partake in said cakes. He also seems to be remarkably chill. This movie is remarkably chill about the fact that Anna and her family are Catholic. Sunil's family is Hindu. Both sets of parents have no issues whatsoever with these children getting married. It's
Nope.
practically an arranged marriage. And Anjan Srivastav even says in a scene, he's like, we'll have two ceremonies. We'll have one in the church and then we'll have in the ceremony as well. So it's like, I know more about Satisha's character and more about I know so much about Anjan Srivastav's character, the kind of dad he is,
Yeah.
also the enabler mom that Sunil has. I know so much more about them than I know about Anna, and I think that's a damn shame. I
Yeah.
don't think it's a damn shame that I know about the parents,
Right,
but
right,
I
right.
think I'd like to know more about the so-called heroine.
Because it just kind of underscores that Sunil is in love with her because she's there.
Yeah,
Like it doesn't really, I don't really root for their love. I
yeah,
root for their love even less than I root for him as an individual, I guess.
yeah. But I also don't necessarily buy the Anna and Chris love story either.
No,
I feel
not at
like
all.
like
Not
the
at all.
love story aspect of this movie is actually the weakest part of it, which is why I don't even think of this as like a rom-com or anything. To
No.
me, it's like a very like coming of age kind of a
Yep.
story. That's really where it stands.
Yep.
um yeah, but I love Anjan Srivastav's character, the dad. He's so sweet.
I want to walk back what I said that I love all the parents in this film. I love some of the parents in this film. He's a
Okay.
little, I mean, I think it's very well performed. Like
Yeah.
he throws his son out of the house
Yeah.
only for about 5 minutes, but still,
Yeah.
like that's not parenting the way we would like it to be. But
Yeah.
he
But I
listens to
also
the voice of wisdom too. So
he does. He does seem very amenable to listening to, especially
yes,
Father Braganza, who is like
yes,
the most well-rounded adult in this movie, which is
yes,
hilarious because Father Braganza is most probably a bachelor, being a
right.
Catholic priest,
Of course.
and yet
Yeah.
he has the best parenting advice, life advice as more than anyone else. But I think there's a part of me that also understands Anjan Srivastav's
Oh yeah.
frustration. He
Yeah.
has a son who is a do nothing.
Yeah.
He does nothing. And he doesn't even have the initiative to potentially have, say, a career in music either.
Right.
Like there's a scene where Anjan Shrivastava, I find it hilarious, by the way, that he keeps referring to the trumpet as Bhopu. He would probably refer to every wind instrument as a Bhopu. Like that's not an oboe, that's not a clarinet, that's a Bhopu. And Bhopu is typically used, by the way, in slang in India to refer to a car horn. Like, the old-fashioned car horns where
Ooh,
it
ooh.
looked like a balloon. Yeah,
Yeah,
those
yeah.
kind that's a bhopu because the sound kind of it's onomatopoeic. So it sounds a bit like
That's
"Huh, huh."
amazing. It
Yeah, so
does.
it's like
Yeah.
the old song, Manu bhai motor chali pom pom pom. It's that, the bhopu pa. The fact
Hmm.
that he refers to a trumpet as a bhopu. But like, I understand his frustration.
Yeah.
Even if he were to say to his son, and he does say to his son, "You can make a career in music and play your bhopu all you want. I support you. You have my
Yeah, which
blessing."
is lovely.
He's not Sunil is not the kid that is going to like really apply himself and like their group is going to release an album or like a demo record. They're going to go to all the music houses. They're going to be like, hey, he's going to show up 1 hour late to any audition they ever get.
Yeah.
So I kind of get it. Like, you have this kid that you're worried about, and
Yeah.
meanwhile, the daughter seems very mature and
She's always
sensible.
studying, and yeah.
She's
Yeah.
so like she's kind of like the
She's
ideal
great.
child, and then
Yeah.
there's this guy.
Yeah. 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 I buy them as a family. I liked their little, not
Yeah.
that they have a ton of scenes together, but I thought they were cute.
Yeah, they're
It's
very
a
cute.
very, despite the fact that the like main guy doesn't get his way with a love
Mm,
story, um, and that we're not sure exactly how much of his learning has happened, it's still a very warm-hearted film, which is
yeah.
very pleasant to see. It's very, and I don't, pleasant sometimes kind of sounds like a nothing comment, but really I mean
Yeah.
it. Like I am pleased to have spent time in the company of
Yeah.
this film. It's got kind of like a warm, happy glow to it. It's,
Yeah.
you know, it's got a sort of gentleness to it.
Yeah.
It's
It
nice.
reminds me a little bit of Josh. And I think part of it is like the whole like Goan thing, but I
Sure.
think part of it is also like again in Josh you have those like, the community elements where they
Mhm.
have like this closeness and everything and
Mhm.
the friends and the softness in it. There's also
And a
shades of
bakery.
and a bakery. There's also shades of what is that movie that Imran Khan had done that I really like? Jane Tu Ya Jane Na with
Sure.
Janelia in it.
Yeah.
And that same like, I mean, it's kind of I mean, that's more for like a romantic movie, but it still
Yeah.
has that same softness. Like, sometimes you love a movie, but if those were real people, you want to have nothing, absolutely
Sure.
nothing to do with them.
Sure. All the
Like, I
time.
don't want to have anything to do with most of the people in K3G, even though I love that movie.
Right.
I mean, everybody in that movie, with the
They would
exception
not
of the two
associate
persons
with
character,
you anyway.
this is true. Every single character in K3G would have a problem with me for one reason or
They
the other.
might hire you to help with wedding clothing or something, but like you're
They
not gonna
might.
hang
Yeah.
with them.
No, they're not. I don't wanna hang with them either, though, so
True.
it's fine.
They're a lot. The right
Um,
chans are a no.
yeah, they're
They're
horrible.
avoid yar.
They are very avoidant. The only person in K3G that I adore wholeheartedly is Farida Jalal because she is Farida Jalal, and I
Sure.
will gladly hang with Farida Jalal any chance, any opportunity that I get. But other than her, everybody else is an avoidant.
Hmm.
Um, this movie is interesting in that I like the characters in this movie and I do want to spend time with them. Maybe not so much Deepak Tijori because he's just very annoyingly boring and kind of smug and weird. I don't know. But I
Yeah.
mean, even him, I wouldn't mind necessarily going to like a burger joint with them and
Sure.
like, having
Yeah.
like cokes and
Fine.
things. I also find it interesting. Anna doesn't seem to have any friends except for these boys in this
I wondered about that
music group.
too.
Yeah, why?
I am assuming the writers ran out of steam or just didn't think she needed them. Like, you're like, why is everyone in this band a boy except for her?
Yeah.
You know, like you couldn't even flesh the band out with some women.
Yeah.
Nope. Nope.
I got a sense a lot of times during this movie that Suchitra, it's I don't know if she was copying Juhi Chawla necessarily, but
Similar.
I very much got like Juhi Chawla light vibes.
Yeah.
Um, Even her costuming was very Juhi Chawla.
Yes.
That yellow dress that she wears with
Yeah.
like the Peter Pan collar and the scarf in her hair and the straw hat and the flouncy stuff that she wears, that is so like dar. That is so
Yeah.
tu haan kar ya na kar tu hai meri kiran, with the little off shoulder chiffons and
Yeah.
everything. I mean, some of it is also like 90s, mid 90s fashions, but so much of it was very like Juhi Chawla light. Having said that, even though I do adore Juhi Chawla, I think I'm glad that Suchitra got this role instead, because I feel like
Hmm.
if Juhi Chawla was in it, there's a potential that she could have been a little annoying.
Hmm.
Because there's times when I love Juhi, most of the time I love Juhi, but sometimes I feel like she goes too much into like helium voice land, where she gets a little
Yeah.
too cutesy for me. She's a little too
Yeah.
twee
Yeah.
sometimes for me.
Yeah.
But she's also a better actor, I think, than Suchitra. So it's possible that if the tweeness was reduced a little bit, who knows? I don't know. This is all conjecture, but I do get
Hmm.
very strong Juhi vibes. And then, of course, at the end, we do have the little guest appearance by Juhi. By the way, Juhi was part of the original cast of this film. So the original cast of this film was Amir Khan as Sunil, Shah Rukh as Chris, and Juhi as Anna.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think if that movie had been made, it would have been a far bigger hit
Yeah.
than this is. But I also think that movie would have had a very different flavor, because I think Amir as Sunil would have brought a very different flavor than Shah Rukh as Sunil. And some
Mhm.
of this is just my bias as a Shah Rukh fan, but I would have
No,
cared
they're
very
different.
little.
Yeah.
I would have cared very little for Amir, though.
I can see him doing this role though. Like there are some kind of similarities to his role in Rangila
Yeah,
in some
Munna.
ways. Mona, yeah, not exactly, but kind of,
Yeah,
kind of.
a
And
little bit.
honestly,
Yeah.
a little bit his character in Dil Chahta Hai, right?
Mm,
A little
yeah.
bit. Not major, but a little bit.
The thing about Amir, though, is that I feel like he doesn't have the innocence or the naivete that Shah Rukh brings to this
Mm,
role, like the wide-eyed, deer caught in headlights thing that he does. I just
yeah.
don't see Amir doing that. Anytime Amir has like a more sort of like a crafty
Mm,
or a shrewd online persona, right? Which is why I think when he's playing the slightly sarcastic person, it works so well.
mm,
It's also what makes me buy him as the villain in 1947 Earth. Like I
mm,
could smell it coming a long way away,
mm,
even though I'm a dum dum about these things. But I just feel like he lacks that innocence and naivete that Shah Rukh could have brought. Just Shah Rukh's physicality. I also think that Shah Rukh is better at physical humor than Amir is.
yes.
Amir is good at like wisecracks and stuff, but this
Yeah.
character doesn't wisecrack. He's too kind of like slow witted to even wisecrack, right? But this character does do a lot of clumsy, like jumping over himself and falling over himself
Hmm.
and dropping things all the time. Like there's so much clumsiness to
And you have
him.
to wonder whether that was scripted or whether he added, or they sort of, once they got him on set, they were like, oh, he can
Mm.
do this kind of stuff in his way. Like he kept jumping off of things. I'm like, oh, my knees, oh, my knees.
Yeah. Well, even his dancing in this movie is very
Yeah.
vigorous.
Yeah.
He's very vigorous. There's times where he's almost doing like jumping jack sort of things where I'm like, are we channeling the Jitendra energy over here? Because that's what I'm feeling. But you can see his star power in the songs, in the one or two
Yeah.
songs that he's done where I love the carnival song.
It's cute.
Ekash ke hum. Oh, I love it. The way he just looks at her and he has the stars in his
Yeah.
eyes. That heart eye emoji was invented with Shah Rukh in mind. I'm convinced of it. Like whoever was the web developer that made that had watched a Shah Rukh Khan movie. That alone, like, melts my heart. I just love the slow motion aspect of it. I love the bubbles. I love the twinkling lights of the carnival. There's almost
Hmm.
like this otherworldly, surreal aspect to it.
Yeah, and sometimes that's kind of a Goa thing. I feel like sometimes that happens in
Yeah.
the movies because it functions as
Sagar as
this
well.
very different place, right? Like
Yeah.
it's unlike anywhere else that anyone ever sets a
Mhm.
film, an Indian film, and it's
Mhm.
got its own very distinct character. Now, I have no
Yeah.
idea if people in Goa feel they are represented accurately or
Right.
with truthfulness or whatever in film, but I think it serves as a fantasy land for other people,
Yeah.
like
It
Rajasthan does as
does.
well. But Goa,
Yes.
Goa, if you need not a village, but not a city,
Yeah.
like Goa's a great. And like I was thinking about whether the ocean plays any kind of role here. It does not, I don't think. Like
No.
there's not a whole lot of gesturing towards it or anything. And the fact that there's water around doesn't really do anything. But obviously the Christian context is important
Right.
in this film.
But I do like the smallness
I
in
do
the
too.
film.
Yeah.
I love the smaller lanes. I love the palm trees that are always like encroaching on everything. I
Like,
mean, this movie
doesn't
was
this,
shot on location
it
in
feels
Goa,
like it could
so
almost be a play in a way,
yes.
right? Like,
Mhm.
except for maybe a little bit of the nightclub, but then you just rotate the scene around and you can, make a
Yeah.
nightclub. So, because I had not remembered, for example, that the gangsters don't really do anything in this
No.
movie. I kept waiting for them to for the embroilment to get
Right.
higher stakes because the gangsters wanted them to do something that was illegal or whatever, and they never do.
No.
And so it just feels again the gentle, like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you're even friends with the gangster. The gangster has taken a shine to you, but he doesn't
Mhm.
actually want you to do anything illegal. He just wants to
No.
be your friend. Like that's sweet. And then he breaks
I
the fourth wall at the end.
loved the actor playing the gangster's henchman. Is that was his
Sidekick, hench
yes, he
dude.
what's that guy's name? Is it Bos? It's not Bosco.
I don't remember.
Um, I thought that actor was so funny. Vasco.
Mm,
Virendra Saxena. Hats off
okay.
to you, sir. He was, especially when the gangster's ordering the hit and then keeps changing his mind about what's going to do, and he's like
Right.
taking notes with his little notepad. That really cracked me up. I don't know what about it, but it was just kind of like this slightly backgroundy thing. And I was like,
Yeah.
because again, added to the sort of fairy tale aspect of this, like, this is
Yeah.
not obviously what anyone would actually do. And it was very funny to
Right.
me.
Like gangsters need accountants and secretaries as well. Gangsters probably dictate grocery lists. Like you can imagine him dictating a grocery list to this dude.
Ah,
I also
he's
like a
an
lot of
alum of the
the,
National School of Drama, that guy.
of course he is.
Of course he
Yeah.
is. He's in custody.
Really? Okay.
He's in Massey Saab and
Mm. Oh, so he's in all the parallel
Dharavi.
films.
Yeah, he's
Okay.
in some of those. Yeah. He's in Domini. I don't remember him in
I don't
Domini.
remember him
He's in
either.
Aina
Huh.
in
Okay.
custody. English August. Anyway,
Oh, interesting.
hooray for Virendra Saxena. He was great.
Yeah.
Side note.
I always wonder how people like that actually make ends meet, though. Funny story about Anjan Srivastav. So, Anjan Srivastav used to work at Allahabad Bank in Juhu. He used to work at the Juhu branch, and my in laws are from Juhu. So, my mother in law used to have a bank account at Allahabad Bank. And one day, she had no idea he worked there. He was like a bank manager or something. And she once walked into the bank branch, whatever. She had some work, there was some like issue, whatever. And they were like, oh, yeah, you can go speak with the bank manager. And so, bank managers in India, they're always in this like little cabin, but they have
Mhm.
like glass windows and stuff. And she sees him and she's like, well, that can be right. Like that's that actor from Bagle Ki Dunya. She didn't even know his name, but he was very famous at the time for a TV show called Bagle Ki Dunya, in which Shah Rukh also has one little episode. I've seen that episode. So she's like, that's that actor from Bagle Ki Dunya. And she looks around because this is Juhu. Like my in-laws home is literally like 15 minutes from Hrithik Roshan's house, right? So she's like, there's probably a film shooting or something here because hashtag just Juhu things. And so she was like, I probably should not. There's probably some camera somewhere. And they're like, no, that's the bank manager. And she's like, okay. So she opens the door, goes in, and it was the weirdest experience because he was very much Anjan Srivastav, bank manager at Allahabad Bank, and he's talking to her about like her checkings account. And
Uh,
the whole time in her brain, she's like, and then at the end, she was like, should I ask him? Should I not ask him? And then she just asked him. She's like, you're the actor from Bagle Ki Dunya, right? Like you're Bagle. And he's like, yes, I am. And then she's like,
that's
cool,
funny.
awesome, okay. And she leaves. But he apparently worked at that specific, like he worked for Allahabad Bank for a very long time, actually.
Huh.
And so I think a lot of these actors, like perhaps this Vasco person is also in the same league. I think a lot of these actors had these very mundane
Sure.
jobs
Sure.
that actually paid the bills. And it's just when you encounter them wearing that other hat, it's just a little perplexing for us.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. That's funny.
but that is my favorite Anjan Srivastav. Like Anjan Srivastav is
That's
literally like helping you sort out issues with your checkings account.
great. That's great.
Does it surprise you to know that Deepak Tijori was considered hot stuff back then?
Yes, but then also, when you come to something after it's happened, the way I
Yeah.
did for so much of this, like eh, it is not uncommon for me to hear that such and such was a big deal or whatever. And I'm like, "Hmm."
Why?
But I
How?
mean, you can't, I wasn't there at the time and I'm, from the culture. So like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think, I'm wondering maybe there was something like that for you when you moved to the United States. You were like that guy or whatever.
Oh.
It must, I'm sure there's someone out there.
There must
Yeah.
have been someone where
Because
I was
while you
like, why
while
is
you
this
would have
person a
gotten
star?
some American media growing up, you didn't get all of it. So
Yeah.
there would be
Mhm.
something. But yeah, so that just happens when you're new to a thing, I think. So
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, I definitely have never been amazed by him, but I haven't seen much either. So
He's kind of meh. He was fine in Khiladi. Khiladi is one of those movies where it's like it's enjoyable if you've only seen Khiladi, but if
the
you've seen
sigh that you just made was amazing.
well, I cannot take Akshay Kumar's name without sighing because it's like such that man is such a huge disappointment for me because back when he was doing movies like Khiladi and Main Khiladi Tu Nadi and that phase,
Yeah.
like he was so hot and he was so awesome and I absolutely adored him. And now he just does shit. He just does absolute rubbish all the time. His movies come and
Ah,
go. He cares. I just saw a trailer of his movie, and again, I sighed very loudly and along with my cat. I just saw a trailer for a movie called Sarfira. He's just phoned it in. Every scene,
mm,
he's just phoned it in. And I'm like, why? What? You have so much money. Just retire. Please. You have already absolutely destroyed any legacy you had. Just enough already. But like, I remember the Akshay Kumar of that time. But anyway, Akshay
sure.
Kumar and Khiladi was great. But Khiladi is a remake of Khel Khel Mein, which I'm sure you've seen, the
Mhm.
Rishi and Neetu one. And Rakesh Roshan's character in Khel Khel Mein is played by Deepak Tijori in
Uh,
Khiladi. So it's like obviously Rishi and Neetu are like the lead couple,
yeah.
and the slightly not as fancy sidekicky couple is Rakesh Roshan and I forget who's the heroine. And in Khiladi, it's Akshay Kumar and who was his actress? Ayesha Julka, and
Mm,
then Deepak Tijori is the Rakesh Roshan in that one. And so he kind of started getting saddled with these like sidekicky things. And like Khiladi is fun. Kilme is also a lot of fun. But yes, this is when Deepak Tijori was like considered like a rising star or whatever. There were a lot of like rising stars back then that they just never rose.
it happens, right? Like I mean, yeah. I won't, we can, that's another issue, another episode maybe of like, who are these like, I mean, it's a subset of whatever happened to, I guess, but like
Yeah.
that guy, really? But
I actually had heard an episode on NPR where they had talked. What was it called? I think that episode was called "Where Do I Know You From"
oh,
or
sure.
something,
Yeah,
and it was about Hollywood actors that you've seen them in everything, but you kind of don't know their name. And one of the
right.
people that was interviewed for that was actually Joan Cusack, which I love the Cusacks.
Oh, I love her.
I
I
know, I love both the
love
Cusacks
her.
actually, both siblings. But she was interviewed in that, and it's kind of like that thing where like everyone sees Joan Cusack in so many things, but like she's not necessarily like a household name, especially now.
Yeah.
So it's one of those
Thing.
things where it's like, where do I know you from? I know you from someplace, but I'm having trouble. So I'm so curious to know, like, since you came to Bollywood
Yeah.
very late. I remember
Yeah.
Monsoon Wedding and then Tal were
Yeah.
kind of like your gateway drugs.
Mhm.
Um, who were the people that most shocked you where you found out that they were a big deal and you were like, what in the heavens name?
Um, it definitely took me a film or two to get Shah Rukh, to be honest. Like
Really?
it wasn't instant for me, but once I got it, I was like, oh, now I see.
So which were the first few Shah Rukh films you saw where you
I
were kind of
think
like, eh?
I think Kuch Kuch Hota Hai was my very first. Um,
And you were
and
immune to his
well,
charm in
Rahul's
Kuch Kuch
really
Hota Hai?
annoying.
I know, but he's also very hot.
Yeah, I mean, again, like the window wasn't right, right? Like I couldn't
Right,
look back on it with nostalgia because it wasn't mine to remember.
right.
And
Raging hormones play a big part.
if I projected myself to how old I was when that movie came out, I don't
Mm,
think I would have liked this film. Like I would have thought I
mm,
was too cool for that film or something like that. So I
mhm.
was, um, I think it was honestly Kalho Naho when I started to kind of get it, which is funny because like that character is also annoying, but
Yeah.
I remember so well watching that Pretty Woman song and being like, I don't know what's happening here, but I love it. There must have been, I'm sure there were others. Oh, yeah, no one's really leaping to mind, I don't think, but
Are there any actresses that you felt about that way?
yeah, I mean, I have not I haven't seen enough of her films, but I don't really get Charisma Kapoor.
Yeah.
I don't dislike her really, but I don't get it.
Yeah.
And again, that's interesting too, because I like as I've said before, like we were born the same year. So like maybe that's part of it is I'm like, well, when I was 18, I would have thought this was stupid. So, but you know,
Right.
like again, I just don't have the context. Um, yeah, those are one every now and again. I think we've talked about this too. When you look back at people from previous generations, you're really
Mm.
like that guy, like Rajendra Kumar, like really? But
He will always be my number one in that list of like, what the
sure,
hell? How did you become a star?
sure.
But then, the 90s also had Sunil Shetty, which I still don't understand to this day
I
how
don't
that guy
understand
became
that
a
one
star.
either. No,
Yeah. I
no.
think it was just like this amazing like vacuum and he like saw his chance and he took it
Good
because
for
he
him.
had nothing, absolutely nothing going for him. He's actually way hotter now than he was back then. He looked horrible back then. And now as Anna, he's actually kind of hot. Like he wears
Yeah.
this like lungi, like South Indian style, and he wears like the kurta and he has the facial hair
Hmm.
and he has the like he's kind of like grown into his looks.
Hmm.
And now he kind of has like sex appeal and gravitas, but back
Yeah.
then it was hideous.
Um, this person is not quite in the same league. I've never understood Arjun Rampal at
Oh,
all.
I have never.
He's very handsome. He's very handsome, but
I don't
the
even think
man
he's
cannot
handsome.
act. Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't find him attractive at all because he doesn't have any personality. You know what I
Sure.
mean? Like, yeah, okay, whatever. He has like the cheekbones and stuff, but then Milan Soman has those, and Milan Soman has personality. So with Arjun Rampal, I was always kind of like, he's kind of in the John Abraham league for me,
Oh, yeah. And it's
where it's
interesting
kind
how
of like,
those two have sort of John Abraham has kind of pulled ahead in terms of like
yeah,
actually doing interesting things. So, yeah. Yeah, more
yeah,
often
in
for
the
me it's
movies. Yeah.
actually films than people, I would say
Mm,
overall, but yeah. Yeah, it just, sometimes you get to something late and you're like, hmm?
yeah.
Yeah, I hope that you will think of some of your American ones and you can put them in the comments or whatever. So I'll have to be
I
like,
know.
oh yeah, that was a huge thing. Here's why.
I feel like for us, back in Nigeria, if it I don't mean this in like a facetious way, but if we knew someone American, they had to be absolutely number one at their game.
Hmm,
Like, it was kind of like if I know an American celebrity, that means they are the biggest name in their field, whether it's
sure,
basketball or cinema or
sure.
music or whatever, because
Yeah.
our avenues for, media were so limited. We
Oh
literally
yeah.
had 2 TV channels.
Yeah.
We had the Nigerian local TV channel, and we had BBC Africa, and it's not like BBC
Mm,
Africa showed stuff from America either,
right,
right?
right,
Very few
right.
syndicated shows. We did not have movie theaters. The one movie theater we had in Lagos growing up primarily showed Nigerian movies.
Sure.
It did not show Hollywood films or anything. So our only avenues for watching anything American was really, if it happened to come on TV, or if grocery store uncle randomly happened to have a cassette, which was rare because why would grocery uncle? And then
Right.
most of us had membership at the British Council growing up for the library. But
Yeah.
again, the British Council library you were gonna get cassettes like Around
Yeah.
the World in 80 Days or Agatha Christie stuff, like
Yeah.
Poirot stuff. You weren't gonna. It was still harder to find American stuff, and if you found American stuff, it was horrible. It was
Yeah.
like Humphrey Bogart stuff, and it was like, what is that terrible movie that my father loved? Citizen Kane. Oh my god.
Pitu just
I
over
was
here besmirching all of American cinema history, like no bigs.
I was like, can we watch a movie that is, like, happy? Like, is that a possibility in this
You love to
household?
cry. What is this?
I love to cry if it's masala.
Ah,
Citizen Kane is not masala enough for me to cry. Humphrey Bogart complaining about of all the gin joints in this world is
mm.
not masala enough for me to cry. Also, Humphrey Bogart does not know how to dance, and neither does the
No, he does
Citizen
not.
Kane. Yeah,
No,
Rosebud ain't dancing either. So it's
no.
kind of like I was like, or else there was Dilip Kumar crying on
Sure.
screen. Like, what is
But
a girl to do?
when you moved here as an adult, were there things that you found out that had been popular among your American friends who were your age, like when they were in high school or something, that then you saw it and you were like, what is this?
No, I basically just caught up with all of the 80s and the 90s
Sure,
movies. And, for example, like in Nigeria, we knew the Toms, we
sure,
knew Hanks and Cruz, and we knew Brad Pitt and Richard Gere and stuff like that. I'm like, we loved those movies, right? Like they were big, they were popular.
yeah.
Eddie Murphy was very
Oh
popular
yeah.
in Nigeria, especially with Nigerians.
Hmm.
Um, Typically, African American Hollywood actors were big in
Sure.
Nigeria. Like their posters were everywhere. They were
It's
seen as
awesome.
being very aspirational. That
Mm,
movie, which I actually think is low key horrifyingly racist, was actually very popular in Nigeria. Is it called Coming to America?
sure is.
Yeah. I was like, the first time I saw it, I was like, this is actually horrifyingly racist, but it was so big in Nigeria. People loved it. The idea that there was this like African prince, like no one knows what country he belongs to. The fact that he was to America, people absolutely loved it.
Sure.
Will Smith was big because of
Yeah.
Fresh Prince of Bel Air and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So I came here and I just like it turbo drive watched everything I could watch. It was amazing. And I had, when I was in Atlanta, when I was doing my master's, I did not have cable. So my only options for TV where I could watch the 700 Club, good Lord. Um,
Don't do
I
that.
know. They just showed that on TV
Yeah.
because it was not cable, right? So it was I could either watch 700 Club or other like crap stuff, or I could go to Blockbuster. Remember Blockbuster and
Oh yeah.
Hollywood Video? And I could go and get cassettes. And I had like a $30 TV and video cassette player that I got from a student who had just moved out. It was Chotu, and I had it in
Yeah.
my living room. So my only options for entertainment, TV or movie wise, was to go to Blockbuster and get movies. So I just like
Hmm.
caught up on everything in those 2 years.
That's funny.
There were people I had never heard of that I discovered, and I was like, where have you been my entire life? For example, Dolly Parton.
Oh yeah.
I had never heard of Dolly Parton. I
Sure.
did not
Sure.
know who Dolly Parton was, but I was in Atlanta and
Oh yeah.
country music was obviously big. And so I suddenly was exposed to everyone from like Johnny Cash and Dolly Parton all the way to like the newer people like, Faith Hill and Toby Keith and all of that. I went through a phase where I was very into country music. And my Georgian friends found it very humorous when I would sing about my truck that had broken down in the middle of the night, I'm a dog that had died, and my wife
Sure.
who was a cheat and lying hoe. Uh, I was like, I really enjoy this music. And they were like, it's just weird to hear you sing it. I loved Alan Jackson. So
Mm,
yeah, no, it's like I made up for my lack of knowledge
that's
of
fun.
American media once I
That's
moved here,
fun.
and Blockbuster and Hollywood Video were the gateway. But I will still never forget my disappointment of going to Atlanta and Chicago and wondering why people did not look like the people from Beverly Hills 90210. I was like, where are the golden people? Where are
Yeah.
the people with the beautiful blonde hair and the convertibles? Why are these Midwestern people not dressed like this? I mean, I wasn't stupid. I knew that Chicago did not have the Pacific Ocean. Like
Sure.
we had Lake Michigan. But still, I was like, I was promised
Yeah.
certain people and I'm
Yeah.
not getting it, you guys, and was very unhappy about that. But then I made up for it when I made my first trip to LA. I desperately wanted to go to Beverly Hills.
Oh,
I desperately wanted to go to Malibu, and I wanted to see all of Baywatch used to actually play in
sure.
India. So because of Baywatch, I wanted to see Malibu. And then I actually saw the people. And then
Ah.
Meri Atma ko thandak mili. I no longer felt cheated. I was like, okay, the
They
people do
exist.
exist. They do exist. They don't want to look at me because they're too cool for me, but they do exist. And I can admire them from afar. But I have a funny anecdote about Christy, our common friend.
Oh, yes.
Um, so she started out with Bollywood being a Hrithik Roshan fan.
Yes.
And she told me that the way she discovered Hrithik Roshan was she was on Devon Avenue and she was at one of the desi shops and she saw a poster of Kahuna Pyar Hai. And she was like, who is this extremely hot person? And so she bought the DVD or cassette or whatever it is that she bought. And she absolutely fell in love with Hrithik Roshan. And Hrithik Roshan was her gateway drug to Bollywood. Usually I remember back in the blogging days of drinking game, take a shot every time
Mm,
you and I say blogging days. In the blogging days, I remember all of the foreign bloggers, their gateway drug was Shah Rukh.
mm.
Christy stood out as being the only person whose gateway drug had actually been Hrithik
Ah,
Roshan. And so she started out in her Bollywood journey by watching Hrithik Roshan's movies. So I think she started with Kahuna Pyar Hai and then the movie you really enjoyed, Mujhse Dosti Karoge.
Mhm.
And, so she watched his films. And then she chanced upon K3G and she watched it for Hrithik Roshan. But she said within 15 minutes of starting K3G, it was like a full, like, 180-degree switch. She was like, "Who is that other guy?" And then from that moment on, she became like a Shah Rukh Khan super fan. And it was hilarious to me. I would always tease her about it because we went to Shah Rukh Khan's concert in Chicago. It was at Allstate Arena. What was it called? I think it's called like Temptations or
Mm.
something like that. But Shah Rukh had come, and so we'd gone there. And I teased her the entire time. I was like, "You're watching a Shah Rukh Khan concert. How come you're not going for a Hrithik Roshan concert?" She was like, "Because he isn't on tour." Um, but that was really funny. And then after that, her Hrithik Roshan fandom just got shelved. She still liked him, but after that, it was Shah Rukh
I
only.
feel like I remember her being like, he doesn't make enough movies.
Yeah.
Can't keep this
Which
up.
is a complaint many people have about him. Um, but yeah, it was funny. You introduced Christy and me. Actually, I remember
Mm.
you sent us a tweet and you said both of you love Shah Rukh. Both of you live in Chicago. You should meet up. And I was like, I will become friends with anybody who lives in Chicago and is a Shah Rukh Khan fan. And Beth is their common friend because you know what? These are all very quality situations.
Match made in heaven.
Yeah. So do you have any parting thoughts on Kabhi Haan Kabhi Na?
No, not really. So
I
much
have.
so that I was kind of like worried as we started this. I'm like, what am I? I don't have that much to say about the film, but as usual, we have talked for forever. But it
Of
is,
course.
yeah, it's more than time pass. But for
Yeah,
me, it probably doesn't linger particularly. This is at least the third time I've seen it, and I still didn't like
right.
remember some of what was going to happen. But it is a really good performance from Shah Rukh, no doubt. No doubt.
Yeah. Can you imagine if you were a movie reviewer and like you know how Roger Ebert is famous for two thumbs up? And what if your whole thing was it's more than time pass? Like Beth Watkins, reviewer. It's more than time pass.
Will I watch it on a plane? Is it more than time pass? Like, is it an
Like,
avoid yard? You know,
wow, she's hard. I
I mean,
wonder.
the world needs good time passes.
Yes.
So it's not a small thing to be a good time pass, I feel.
This is true. I agree heartily as a consumer of reality television. I agree that the world needs more time pass. What else am I going to like watch on TV while I'm like scrolling Instagram? Like,
It's
come
not the
on,
news because that's
it's not the
horrible.
news. Definitely not the news. Okay, important question for you,
Mm,
especially in light of the picture behind you.
mm.
What ice cream flavor do we think Sunil is, despite the fact that that is a vanilla soft cone?
What flavor is he? Okay. This is what just came to mind instantly, so I'll go with it. I
Okay.
think he's something like bubblegum or birthday cake,
Ah,
something
yeah.
kind of juvenile, a little
Mm.
too, it's not that it's too much, it's just it's in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Like he's gonna have to adjust his palate,
Mm.
or
It's
I'm
not a
gonna
very advanced flavor.
it's not a very advanced flavor. Yeah. And it looks like it's got colors or swirls or like
Yeah.
confettis or something, but like it's not ultimately it's not a long-term flavor relationship.
Yeah. You're not gonna order it at Baskin
I'm
Robbins when you're
definitely not.
craving,
I'm
yeah.
definitely not. No.
The funny thing is, I was actually going to assign, the birthday cake flavor to Anna, especially due
Sure.
to the outfit she wears in the carnival
Yes,
scene.
that's legit.
Um, would you assign that same flavor to her as well?
Yeah, I mean, all of these people are probably in that sort of. Oh, you know that one that I don't know what this tastes like actually, but I think it's called Superman, and it's like blue, pink, yellow swirls. Like
Oh, is it?
again, this kind of like little kid friendly
Mm,
flavors. Like I'm sorry if your favorite flavor is like a cookies and cream. Like to me, that's I
mm,
don't dislike it, but like I'm never gonna choose that.
yeah.
Like I need more than like crumbled up fake Oreos in my like give me more.
Right. So all of these would be like the sort of like juvenile
A little bit. Yeah.
8-year-old choice kind of a thing.
Yeah.
What flavor would you give Father Braganza? Because to me, he's kind of
Oh,
interesting.
well, I do feel we need to acknowledge the Portuguese heritage of this situation.
Mm,
So
yes.
I know nothing about Portuguese food. I imagine it's got a lot of seafood, which doesn't go with ice cream. And also
No.
it's kind of vinegar forward, isn't it? I believe, like, isn't that where,
But a lot of Goans, because I had Goan friends growing up. I mean, they lived in Mumbai, but they were from Goa. They used to always drink port wine on
yeah, it needs
Christmas.
a port ripple or
Yeah,
a
and they would eat
sherry, I
plum
guess is
cake for
Spanish, but
Christmas,
okay. So maybe like something with a plum cake, like the crumbles and then like a port sauce ripple.
maybe something like that.
Oh, or you could do like a port reduction and use it as a syrup on top.
Yeah, maybe. And he's like a little bit of a complicated, not complicated, but at least he has like a few layers to
And you
him.
need him sort of only occasionally. That's
Yes,
again not
yes.
my weekly flavor, but like every, at certain holidays, Christmas and Easter, you bring him out like,
Yeah. Anjan Srivastav
oh,
is not an ice cream. I think Anjan Srivastav is a kulfi.
oh, okay.
And
I,
I'm trying to think what kulfi he'd be.
he gives me nut vibes.
Yes. Y- Yeah.
I don't know
He's a
why.
little toothy and
Yeah,
wholesome.
yeah.
Badam pista.
Mm.
So like almond and
Oh,
pistachio.
yeah, perfect.
I
Perfect.
would assign badam pista to him.
Perfect.
Okay. Important task sorted. We have discussed our ice cream flavors for this movie. The overarching ice cream flavor for Kabhi Haan Kabhi Na, I think, would be the bubblegum flavor, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What ice cream flavor are you choosing to have this sweltering
It's
June
so
week?
hot here, I say to people who perhaps have been in India most of their lives. Uh, I went, our town has recently acquired a second Mexican ice cream place. And if you have the opportunity to go to a Mexican ice cream shop, you should. It's delicious. I got mango,
Oh,
really
okay.
good. So I usually go for fruit when I'm really, really hot. And of course they have lovely
Mm,
like pineapple, watermelon, strawberry, lime, all those things. Prickly pear, that's really good.
mm,
So any of those, but I went mango partly because it's such a pretty color.
yeah. My favorite Mexican ice cream flavor is actually the guava one.
That's good too.
Because apart from in India, where we get the Peru ice cream, it's very hard to
Hmm.
find guava as a flavor.
Hmm.
First of
Hmm.
all, it's rare. And if you do find it, it tends to be very like artificially.
Sure.
But I feel like the Mexican ice cream shops,
Yeah.
they do the guava flavor fairly
And I
well.
love the water-based ones, the nieve.
Yeah,
Wait, is that nieve? I can't remember
I don't
which one's
know.
which, but so if you are not a dairy consumer or you just want something like super
Super
refreshing, I
beige.
feel, yeah, and they're not, sometimes you try to make a granita or something and it's like shards. This is still somehow like
Mm.
scoopable and lovely. So good.
Oh, you know what? These characters could also be gola. Have you ever had gola in India? It's that thing like the
No,
slushy ice.
I know what it is. I've never had it, but yeah, sure.
I think they could be like gola as well. Because
Mhm,
again, it's like frothy and
mhm.
punny and it's like just something that you just eat. It's so much fun. My parents would always get kala khatta and my cousin and I would get raspberry. I discovered very late in life that what the vendors called raspberry in India, it's actually raspberry.
Sure.
I thought raspberry was actually the name of of the
No,
flavor. It's actually raspberry, and I was like, they've just been pronouncing it raspberry, but I was like, oh, it's raspberry. Got it. Okay. Um,
listen, India is so good at like taking things in and making it their own. It's remarkable. So why not?
yeah. Do you like horchata ice cream? I feel like this is a
Not
controversial question.
particularly. Like I'm not going to poo-poo it. Like I'm not going to choose it, but if someone serves it to me, that's okay. But I never order those to
Yeah.
drink either. I always get a Jamaica or some other agua fresca. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not big on horchata.
I don't like it either, but I feel like the few times I've confessed to not liking horchata, my friends have kind of like just done this like quick intake of breath, like, it's very like nahi. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't know that people had such strong
This
feelings
was
about
when you
horchata.
say more for you.
Yes, you can enjoy it. I will have something else. I will have raspberry. Um, okay, amazing. Well, I think that concludes this episode of Kabhi Haan Kabhi Na, which according to me is a wonderful movie, and according to Beth is better than Time Pass. I want us to do at least one episode. I hope this happens where one of us is just raving the entire time like a lunatic, and we're like, "Oh my god, I love it," and the other person is just like, "Meh, whatevs."
I mean, we did definitely not particularly enjoy each other's favorite films when we did that episode
Yeah.
like a year
But
ago. So
also Rocky and Rani ki prem kahani, where I absolutely adore Rocky Randhawa, and you were just like, ah, you were so
this
over him.
guy.
And I still remember your horror when I said, so Beth, are you team Rocky or are you team Ronnie? And you were like, of course I'm team Ronnie. You
How is this a
practically yelled
choice?
at me. And I was like, really? You don't like Rocky? I love Rocky. He reminds me of all my gym bros. As we know, I love gym bros.
Mm.
Anyway, that concludes this episode of Kabhi Haan Kabhi Naa. I mean, it concludes this episode of Filmy Ladies. My brain is now shot. It is too hot here, even though I'm wearing a sweatshirt. And we will see you next week with another episode. Thank you and bye.
Don't drop your ice cream.